For something like 4,000 years, we've all been asking the exact same question. How in the world were the pyramids built? We always talk about, giant ramps, maybe some kind of lost technology, or just incredible feats of labor. But what if the real mystery isn't about missing tools? What if it's about our own missing assumptions? Okay, let's get right into it. It's a bold statement, I know, but here it is. The pyramids just weren't built the way we think. And the wildest part, the clues, the real evidence, well, it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. Okay, so first things first, we really have to appreciate that the Great Pyramid isn't just some old pile of rocks. It's basically an impossible object. I mean, this thing was built with such a brutal, unforgiving precision that it punishes even the tiniest mistakes. So any theory, and I mean any theory about how it was built, has to be able to explain that level of perfection. And look at this, because this really puts the sheer scale of time into perspective. The pyramids are so ridiculously ancient that Cleopatra, lived closer in time to the iPhone than she did to their construction. Let that sink in for a second. Even the ancient Romans were touring them as ruins. Over that much time, records just vanish. But geometry? Geometry is permanent. And the geometry we're talking about here it's staggering. Let's just run through some of the numbers. Quick fire. First up, this thing was originally 146 meters tall. That made it the tallest man-made structure in the entire world for almost 4,000 years. Next, it was built using an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. And we're not talking about bricks here. A lot of these things weigh several tons apiece. The logistics are just absolutely mind-bending. And this right here is what really illustrates the core challenge. Its base is a near-perfect square, and the whole thing is aligned to true north within a tiny, tiny fraction of a degree. And how did they do it? No GPS, no lasers, they didn't even have a simple compass. It was all done with stars, mathematics, and just an unbelievable level of discipline. So before we can even get to the how, we've got to clear away some of the noise, the common myths that just kind of muddy the waters. All right, first and foremost, let's get this one big myth out of the way. The pyramids were not built by slaves. That's just not true. Archaeology has actually uncovered entire cities for the workers right nearby. We're talking bakeries, tombs, and even evidence of really advanced medical care. This was a huge state-level project, and it was carried out by a skilled, organized, and clearly respected workforce. Okay, and this brings us to the real heart of the problem. This is the great mystery that has stumped experts for centuries. See, the thing is, almost every theory about how they built it sounds pretty plausible, right up until you get to the very top of the pyramid. Finishing that final pointed capstone, the apex, it requires three things that most theories just can't seem to provide. One, you absolutely need to see all four edges at the same time to maintain that perfect angle. Two, you need enough space for workers to actually move around and maneuver these heavy stones. And three, you need an incredibly stable platform to work on at a truly dizzying height. Now, the most popular idea you always hear about is a giant external ramp, right? But the problem is, the physics just doesn't work. I mean, to reach the top at a safe, usable angle, a ramp would have to stretch for kilometers. It would end up being a project that was actually bigger than the pyramid itself. It would take more stone and more labor. It just doesn't make sense. And here's the real kicker. The most damning point of all, there is zero archaeological evidence that these massive ramps ever existed. Not a single trace. No foundations, no leftover rubble, no construction scars on the landscape, nothing. And you have to understand, in archaeology, an absence that complete, that's powerful evidence in itself. And that's really where most theories fall apart. It's not because we find evidence that contradicts them, it's because we find nothing. So what if we've been asking the totally wrong question this whole time? It's time for a pretty radical shift in how we think about this. Okay, so instead of asking, how did they move millions of blocks up, what if we just flipped the question on its head? What if the pyramid wasn't built upward, but was actually carved downward from a much larger shape? Now, just thinking about that one simple shift in perspective, it suddenly solves all those problems that have plagued us for so long. It elegantly explains the precision, the lack of any ramps, and that supposedly impossible challenge of finishing the apex. Okay, so here's how it could have actually worked. Step 1, you don't start on a flat base. You begin with a massive stepped block of stone right there on the plateau. Step 2, from this huge, stable platform you've created at the top, you start moving material downward. Step 3, you literally carve the pyramid's final shape from the top down, which gives you perfect visibility of every single edge. And step 4, all that leftover material is simply reused to build out the lower parts. The construction system literally eats itself as it goes. Now, I know this idea of a self-cannibalizing system might sound a little strange, but think about it. It is perfectly consistent with ancient Egyptian practices. These people were absolute masters of recycling. Boats would become furniture. Old monuments were quarried for stone to build new ones. A construction method that leaves zero waste behind? That fits their mindset perfectly. And you know what? We actually have hints of this in the stones themselves. The very few original casing stones that have survived, they show things like vertical seams and bonding patterns that are repeated on totally different faces of the pyramid. And what does that suggest? Well, it suggests that multiple teams were working at the same time on a big, wide, open platform, not all struggling for space on some narrow, ramp-choked construction site. So, all of this brings us to our conclusion and to a final and, a slightly unsettling question. The real mystery of the pyramid isn't about what's there, but what isn't. It's a puzzle that's defined by what I'd call the geometry of absence. Just remember what we talked about. The big external ramp theory fails not because we found evidence against it. It fails because we have found absolutely nothing for it. No ramps, no tools, no construction debris. It's almost like a perfectly clean crime scene, and that raises a pretty profound possibility. What if the builders did this on purpose? What if they intentionally erased their methods? What if the whole point was for the pyramid to be a perfect, finished object with absolutely no trace of the process that created it? So maybe the absence of evidence isn't a failure of archaeology to find the clues. Maybe the absence is the clue. And maybe, just maybe, that is the final, enduring genius of the Great Pyramid.